All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 o'clock. Welcome to our Community Conversations Round 2. We had a great conversation and great dialogue last night with students and community members and employees about how we are building meaningful relationships between students and police officers here in Crowley ISD. We're talking about some new exciting things coming down the pipeline here in our district. And we're here today to get input from you, from our students, from our faith-based partners. And we are excited that you've taken time out of your busy Wednesday to join us for this conversation. Dr. McFarland, got a great group logging on.
No doubt, no doubt. Definitely excited to hear the conversation. We had a great conversation yesterday, and just excited to follow up with this conversation today. Definitely appreciative of the students who are on the line. Definitely looking forward to hearing your voice as we begin to make decisions about this important topic. But also definitely excited about the ministers and our ministerial leaders that we have online, as well as our experts, and then also our board members who are providing outstanding leadership and guidance, and thankful for Ms. Benton being here today. And so looking forward to the conversation. So just excited about what is to come.
Thank you, Dr. McFarland. Ms. Benton, great to see you this morning. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join the group.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your leadership on the board, your service to our community. You'll have an opportunity today to hear from our students about how we build these relationships between police officers and students. And so thank you for being here. Please feel free to chime in or weigh in anytime you'd like.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. McFarland, let's introduce some of our student panelists and faith-based partners who are here today. So I'm going to go down the list, students, as I call your name. If you'll unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are, what school you go to, and what you're involved with. We will start here with Angel Lopez.
So I'm Angel Lopez. I go to North Crowley High School. And a little bit about myself, what I'm involved in. I'm a part of the Mighty Panther Band. And at my local CTE center, I'm a part of my robotics team. So that's what I'm involved with.
Band and robotics, that's fantastic. Dude, you're going to love the new CTE center. When we get everyone here in person, it's phenomenal. You're going to really enjoy having classes there.
I saw some videos of it, and it looked really nice. And I was a bit disappointed that we wouldn't be there at the beginning of the year, so we won't experience the entire year there, but we'll get there, hopefully.
We will. We'll make it happen. We're excited to have you there. All right, up next, let's call Kennedy Jackson.
Hello, I'm Kennedy Jackson. I go to North Crowley High School. I'm a senior. I'm a varsity cheerleader. I'm in Key Club, student council, and things like that.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Kennedy. I know you're busy during the day, but thanks for taking a little time out during your break.
Thank you.
All right, good morning, Kennedy.
Good morning.
All right.
All right, Mr. Bryce Harris.
Hello, my name is Bryce Harris. I attend North Crowley High School. I'm a junior. I play basketball, and at the CTE Center, I take aerospace engineering and science, regular engineering like science.
Awesome.
Aerospace engineering, that's awesome, Bryce. Dress sharp today, too. I like that shirt.
Thank you.
All right, Daisha Spellman.
Hi, I'm Daisha Spellman. I'm a Crowley High School senior. I'm involved in talented student council leadership and track as well as powerlifting.
Great. It's good to see you again, Daisha. Thank you for being here with us.
Awesome, Daisha.
All right, I'm going through the list. Do I have Noel Cordova?
Yes, hi, I'm Noel. I go to North Crowley High School, and I'm involved with band, and I'm in National Honor Society.
Band and National Honor Society, fantastic.
Awesome.
I'm moving Alicia Tolley. She's logging in. She's moving over from an attendee to a panelist. So Alicia, when you can unmute yourself, please introduce yourself.
Hi. Oh, hold on one second. Y'all like my background? Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway. So my name's Alexis Catali. I'm a senior at North Crowley High School. I'm a varsity volleyball player. I'm a setter. I'm in NHS. I'm an avid, like a 6-year avid student, and I'm the treasurer for the student body.
Fantastic. And that best background award goes to Alicia. We all wish we were there right now. And last but not least, I believe our last student that's logging on is Mr. James Hunt. James, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
Hey, James, introduce yourself. Tell us where you go to school and what you do there.
My name is James Ethan Hunt. I go to Summer Creek Middle School. I am in honors band, and I am in JCC.
And that's Junior Cadet Corps, correct?
Yes, sir.
Getting you ready for JROTC in high school. That's fantastic. And what instrument do you play in the band?
French horn, sir.
Great. All right. Are there any others? Thank you so much, James. Are there any other students I'm missing before I go to our faith-based partners? All right. Hey, Pastor George Shelton, we'll start with you. Are you still on the line?
Yes, I'm right here. I'm Pastor George Shelton of the Lord's House. I've been a Crowley resident since 1996 and just love this district. I was fortunate to have two of my sons go through the Crowley ISD. My middle son went to Crowley. In fact, he won the award, Mr. Crowley, led his team to a state championship. My middle son went to North Crowley. And even though my oldest boys didn't have any Crowley school ties, he did. His first coaching job was at Crowley Middle School, and then he later coached at Crowley High School. But most people know me as the guy singing in the stands. I know they can play. So I want y'all to know I love Crowley, glad to be a part, and glad to be part of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Shelton, for being here, but also all that your entire family has done for and is continuing to do for Crowley ISD, valued members of our community. Up next, we'll introduce Pastor Ray Baldwin from the Turning Point Church.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. And I'm Ray Baldwin. My wife and I are the children's pastors at Turning Point Church. We've been involved in Crowley schools for 12 years. The main school we're involved in is Pointer Elementary. We are also involved with the Fort Worth PD. I'm a Kappa member. My wife is too. Kappa is Clergy and Police Alliance. We are on call to assist police officers in all kinds of different situations. And we also have a program called Children Behind the Shield, where we teach and train children how to respect for law officers and how to deal with situations when approached by a police officer. So we're glad to be here. It's an honor, and we're looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Pastor Baldwin. We appreciate you and your wife, all you do for our schools and our community. And finally, we have Pastor Brendan Bagnell. Pastor Bagnell, can you hear us?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity today to be part of this conversation. My name is Brendan Bagnell. I'm the executive pastor at Turning Point Church. I'm also a former Fort Worth police officer, so I kind of have a dual background, whether in faith-based and law enforcement. And I'm excited to be part of this conversation. These conversations need to happen more often, need to be community-based and in person, or as in person as possible in this setting. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you, sir, for being part of the conversation. I want to introduce one of our Crowley ISD campus administrators. Let me tell you a little bit about himself, Mr. Markeith West.
Hello, everyone. My name is Markeith West. I'm one of the assistant principals at North Crowley High School. I am thrilled to be on this panel today. A little bit about myself. I was a former police officer under Dr. Baldwin here at Arlington PD. I transitioned to Dallas ISD Police Department, also where I was a SRO for about 4 years there. I've been in administration now for a couple of years here. I was formerly at the CTE as a law teacher and also an administrator. Now I transitioned to North Crowley High School this year.
Well, Mr. West, I know you're super busy over there. Thank you for taking time to be here and bringing perspective from both the law enforcement side and in campus administrator side. We appreciate that. And Dr. McFarland, our final panelist, Mr. West just mentioned, is Dr. Bowman from the Bowman Group. Dr. Bowman, we're excited to have you with us again this morning.
Great. It is an honor to be here, to be a part of the CISD family and to interact with such incredible staff. I tell you, I am a national consultant working in cities like Chicago, Baltimore, New Orleans, New York. We're bringing police departments into school districts, but also helping cities with their problems with communities as well. It's quite an honor working with your team. It's an honor to be a part of this forum today, and we look forward to continuing to work with the student and the community there in Crowley ISD.
Thank you, Dr. Melvin. Dr. McFarland, that's our expert panel. We got a lot of great voices to hear from today.
All right, well, great. My battery just dropped. I just got a sign that said my battery is low, so give me a second. Okay, now I'm back. All right.
You're good?
No, for really, I want to just say I definitely appreciate all of you all for being present today for this conversation. And this conversation is a really important one. It's a critical one. As you all know, we are having a conversation, and started the conversation last night, but having a conversation about actually hiring our own police department and creating our own police department in Crowley ISD. One that is actually made up of Crowley ISD employees, where we have some authority and influence over. And so I wanted to share with you all that today and have this conversation. And I recognize that as we look at society, and we look at the pandemic, but we look at the social unrest that's occurring and the issues with police and students and police and African-American males and others in society, I just think now is the right time for us to have the conversation. And so in every crisis, I believe there's an opportunity. And the opportunity that has presented itself for Crowley ISD and the Crowley community is for us, the opportunity is for us to be able to have a dialogue, for us to hear from you all students, hear from our community leaders, hear from experts in law enforcement, and to really come to grips with what kind of police department do we want within our community and within our schools. Today is our really opportunity to talk about that and to hear from you all. Students, you know, one of the things is we know that oftentimes your voice is left out. And so I am thankful for Ms. Benton and the other board members who have really insisted that we hear from students about the type of police department you want on your campuses and within your communities. And so today is really that. It's our opportunity to hear from students, to hear from our community members about the type of police department that we want on the campus, but also to us to communicate to you like why we are even having the conversation. And I'll start there. So we have for quite some time in Crowley ISD have had officers in the schools, and officers has just been a part of what we do. However, the way the relationships have been constructed is we have had contracts and contracts with both the city of Crowley, the city of Fort Worth, and also Tarrant County police officers. And quite frankly, those relationships have been positive. We've had very positive experience with all three agencies, and we expect to continue to have those relationships with those three agencies. But what we do know is that when you're working with three different agencies, there are some inefficiencies that emerge. And as safety becomes more and more of a priority for all of us, we want to make sure that we have the most efficient system available for us. And I can talk a little bit more about the inefficiencies later if there is a desire. But I want you to know that we're having this conversation of hiring our own police department and standing up our own police department to address some efficiency issues, but also to ensure that we have the maximum amount of safety for our students. And so that's kind of why we're here to have this conversation today, to hear from students, to hear your voice. Students, what I'm asking you to do is speak your truth. Share with us from your heart. Share with us what you're feeling and what you think your other classmates may be feeling as well. Even if you don't have the experience, I want you to think about what other students that you are associated with would be feeling. And so you're actually acting as representatives. You're speaking on behalf of the students of Crowley ISD. We have some serious decisions to make within the next couple of weeks, and so we need your input. And so today is really our opportunity to do that.
Great. Well, Dr. Let's hear from our students. It looks like Alicia's already raising her hand. Alicia, do you have a question before we get started?
Yes, I do. Dr. McFarland, for you, you went ahead and you said that you would further explain the inefficiencies. Mm-hmm. And I think I would really like to hear that so I could further analyze why we're really getting our own police department and what you really mean by we need to limit the inefficiencies. Like, I don't understand where that's coming from.
Alicia, that is a great question. I appreciate that. And that's the right question you should be asking. So the way we currently have our our relationship, the way the current relationship is codified and written. So in Crowley, in the city of Crowley, the police department, the police in Crowley that are hired by Crowley City, they have jurisdiction within the Crowley city limits. And so we have about 3 schools, maybe 4, that are in Crowley city limits and within their jurisdiction. But we have about 20 schools that are actually in Fort Worth. And those schools are within the Fort Worth Police Department's jurisdiction. And so, and I think Dr. Baldwin may be able to help in a second when we talk about the difference between a school resource officer and a police officer that's actually working within our school district. He'll be able to differentiate, but for our conversation, when we have 2 different agencies, and then actually Tarrant County is another agency that we work with as well. So those officers are actually assigned to a campus within their jurisdiction. So for example, we have an officer or maybe a series of officers that are assigned to Crowley High and also to H.F. Stevens. If we have an issue that occur, and we also have officers that are assigned to maybe Summer Creek or Crowley Middle, but we don't have one officer assigned to every campus, but we have officers assigned to schools in that area. But let's say, for example, we have an incident or a situation that occurs at H.F. Stevens. And maybe when that incident occurs, that officer is actually out on the officer, maybe the officer is out sick, or maybe the officer is present, but an incident occurs at H.F. Stevens. We can't call for the officer from Summer Creek and send the officer from Summer Creek over to H.F. Stevens, because that's really out of their jurisdiction. There are a lot of procedures that we have to go through, and you all know oftentimes when there's a need for additional officers, the time, being able to be present and having the flexibility to make it happen quickly is something that is important for us. And so having these different jurisdictions that you have to work with just creates some inefficiencies as far as getting services and getting safety in the areas that we need. Also, if you have officers, so we may have a contract with the city of Crowley for 3 officers or 5 officers, but if they can only hire 3 officers, then we only get 3 officers. And so we may go, and this has happened, quite frankly, that we have gone, at times we've gone short on officers because there's just a shortage of people wanting to be police officers right now in the cities. And so that in turn becomes our issue. And so we have a contract for 5 officers, but we only have 3 officers, but we still have schools that need cover. So we have to figure out how do we kind of bridge that gap. And so that's a situation, a scenario that plays out multiple times. We have a situation where we may have an incident, and we had an incident actually in the North Crowley community, which was not on the school campus, but it was near the school. And so we had to be able to call additional officers to come help. Well, when we call officers, that means we have schools that are uncovered. And so it just creates a lot of inefficiencies. When I say inefficiencies, it really means having the authority to be able to assign people where we need them to be. The other issue is the training that's required for the officers is something that's set by the PD, the department that they actually work for. So we are receiving officers, but we're not able to, with our current contract, to mandate the type of training we need. When we have our own officers, we actually can do that.
Great question, Alicia. Thank you for diving in deeper on that. Dr. McFarland, you want to get, last time when we started with our students, one of the first questions we asked them was, students, based on your experience, do you think that there should be officers in school? Why or why not?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's start there, because we made some assumptions that you want officers in your schools. I get that is a question. What we want to do is start, and we want to answer the question, do you feel like, from your perspective, we need police officers in schools, or do you feel like we don't need them? And if not, then then share with us a possible alternative. Let's do that. Let's answer that question first. Kennedy, we'll start with you.
Yes, hello. So what I'm taking from it, give me one moment. What I'm taking from it is that, I mean, of course, officers are needed, you know, for protection and safety precautions. I feel like if it would be possible to hire like Crowley ISD's own, you know, specific officers and people who stick to one school, like we talked about last night, you know, building those personal relationships so that students become familiar with who they're looking at, who's protecting them, who's around them 24/7, you know. So I just think it would be that would solve that issue of having to, you know, have people that can't float here, go there, you know. So the coverage issue, I feel like will be covered if, you know, we were able to hire our own without going through PD.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. What are you thinking, Noah? What do you feel about a police presence in schools?
I think it's necessary because there's, you know, in the United States, there are a lot of issues that pop off, and I do feel comfortable in schools being able to see a police officer there that I know will protect me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry, my video has cut off.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah, so I really feel, yeah, I really feel comfortable if there were officers, and especially our own Crowley ISD officers in our schools.
Gotcha. Alicia, how do you feel about that, Alicia?
Okay, so personally, I think that police officers should be at school, but I don't want it to be overwhelming.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think it's necessary for there to be like 2 or 3 police officers at one high school, you know? Like one in the little office, because I know they have it in the hallway by the elevator in the nurse's room. And I think like that's a good place to have it because it's a frequent hallway where everybody can see, oh, I'm protected, but there's not like 4 or 5 of them in there. And they're like, oh my gosh, well, I can't even make one wrong move with somebody thinking something, because there are some people that actually feel that way about police officers, and you're not going to be able to control that. So it's like, you have to find the happy medium. So I think that having police officers at school is very necessary, but not to the point where it's overwhelming. And I do agree with what y'all are trying to make happen with CISD hiring their own officers, because then, like Kennedy mentioned, being able to form that personal relationship, being with an adult for like years and years of your education and high school career or middle school or elementary, like you don't forget that. You don't forget your elementary teachers, your middle school teachers, or that teacher that helped you do that. So you wouldn't forget that police officer that was actually nice to you or helped you out of a situation or made sure you were okay. So that's why I think that is also very important that we look into hiring our own police officers.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tall. All right. What do you think? What do you think, Ms. Spellman?
I do think police officers are very necessary within schools because all over the country we see mass school shootings everywhere, and you never necessarily know. So I think that it's important that we have officers, but like Alicia said, it doesn't need to be overbearing to make students feel uncomfortable, because at this current time in America, a lot of us already do feel uncomfortable around police officers. So I think it's important that we establish that respect and that trust in between the students and the police officers so that we don't feel uncomfortable going to school.
Gotcha. Good point. Mr. Hunt, what do you think? I know you're at the middle school, and so what do you think about seeing police officers in your school versus not having them there?
I feel like seeing police officers would be a pretty good, it would be better than what it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that it doesn't need to be overwhelming. Like, 4 or more is a lot, but one police officer can't cover the whole school. And some people might feel uncomfortable with that. I have a really good relationship with police officers. One of my dad's best friends is a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
We hang out with him a lot. He's a really good guy.
Mm-hmm.
The police officers do need to be friendly. Like Officer Gardner at Summer Creek is very friendly to students. She makes sure that people don't get into fights, and she's happy to help students and be kind to them in the halls daily. And we need that in our schools. But safety-wise, I think that you just need more than one police officer at a school.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. The great insight, great point. Mr. Harris, what's your perspective on it?
I feel like we don't need, like, I'll say 2 officers at most, maybe like one monitoring downstairs, one monitoring upstairs. And I feel like, you know, as long as they're presenting themselves to the kids in a good way, I don't feel like the kids should be uncomfortable, you know. As long as they're seeing the same police officer every day, you know, and they get to build a relationship with the police officer, it shouldn't be a problem with kids being uncomfortable. So I feel like maybe one officer downstairs, one upstairs, you know, just monitoring and just being, don't come off, you know, like I said yesterday, don't come off as oh, I'm ready to see if anything pop off or anything, you know. Just be nice, you know, be friendly, talk to the students, and, you know, students should be comfortable if that happens.
Gotcha.
And they should build a good relationship. It shouldn't be a problem.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Mr. Lopez?
I completely agree with what James and what Mr. Harris said. The 2 officers is very necessary, I feel, because one officer wouldn't be able to provide the coverage that we would need in an area like a high school. Like, according to the negative stigma we feel with police officers nowadays, like we need to overcome that with these friendly relationships that we develop with them. Like for me, I don't even know the name of my police officer at my own campus, so that could be like a problem. We don't affiliate ourselves with them. We don't know them. We don't have this relationship. So we need to overcome this little stigma we have associating with them, because whenever we see an officer, it's always going to be like, oh, they're going to catch me doing something. Am I doing anything wrong? We need to change that as, oh, he's protecting me. I'm doing the right thing, and he's going to catch whoever's doing the wrong thing. I'm doing the right. So we're not going to associate that negative affiliation with the police officers we have nowadays. So having that relationship is essential, basically, and we need to have like enough coverage at the same time. It's finding that balance between I feel safe and there's this amount of police officers. Me personally is what I believe.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And then Mr. Elijah, anything you want to add?
Dr. McFarland, I think they covered it all.
Okay. All right. All right. Appreciate it. So yeah, so you know, it seems that all of you have shared that you understand the reason why we would have it, but you all also have spoken to something that is resonating with me. One I heard is about consistency, having a consistent person that you can recognize and relate to, and then also you talked about relationships, and so those are key characteristics that we'll be looking for sure. So we can go on to the next question, Kirsten, if you want to go to the next one.
So yeah, we heard about everyone's opinions on the need for them in the schools, but now let's talk about what kind of characteristics we should be looking for, not only in our officers, but Crowley IC gets to hire a chief of police to lead this whole department. So what are some characteristics, qualities, maybe experience that we should be looking for as we get to build this department from the ground up?
All right, Kennedy, go ahead.
Yes, as far as experience, I feel like each officer who is hired, you know, at school should have experience with children, you know, to know how to deal with certain situations. As far as the hiring process goes, yeah, the kids situation, I feel like, you know, their character, you know, needs to be revolved around integrity, you know, and honesty, and, you know, just being kind, you know, doing what's right, you know, when kids are looking, when kids aren't looking, when adults are looking, when adults aren't looking, you know, just so that that trust can be built, you know, amongst everyone, you know. So I just felt like character is a big one, and then experience with kids so they can understand, you know, our point of view and stuff like that.
Awesome. All right.
Well, Alicia has her hand raised on this one. Alicia, what are you thinking?
Okay, so I feel like a police officer, and you also said you get to hire who else? The chief of what?
The chief of police.
Okay, so I feel like for you to be good, this goes for anybody, for you to be good at your job, you have to like what you're doing, but be passionate about what comes with it, the good and the bad, and know that you have to accept either or. So for that relating to police officers, I feel like they need to feel like it's more than just protecting and having to follow procedure. I think it's more of like they have to actually love what they're doing and know that they're protecting somebody's life and someone's family, and that they actually see the domino effect behind it, which also means that there's a domino effect with how they treat one person. So let's say they're a little snappy one day, and I'm saying like people are gonna have their bad days, but it's like people only see police officers when something bad is happening, like when someone is getting arrested, when someone has to break up a fight. And it's like, I feel like if they know that they have to go past that limit of only being seen when a fight breaks out or only being seen when they're getting called down to the office, then everything would go so much more smoothly, because then they don't feel like everyone doesn't see like they just have one job, which is to protect and shoot. No, it's to like develop a relationship with us, so they really know who we're protecting and why we're doing it, why they're doing it.
Hey, I would just like to add to that. On last night, I know Dr. McFarland asked the question, do you think that the chief or even these candidates should come from the area in which we serve? And Dr. McFarland, I always have a story to tell. I recently joined the On-Ramps English program with UT this year. And so what we work on this year is just controversial topics. And so one of the many things we've learned is that in identifying a controversial topic or those that are stakeholders is, you have three different points, and one of them is values. And what that word values mean in this scenario is, the things that matter to you, even if you are not involved or it's at stake for you. And I think that's what it takes, is those people coming forward and sharing those same values for the betterment of the students within Crowley ISD. And when we can have a clear perspective of seeing that, then we ought to jump and get those candidates as soon as possible.
Looks like James has his hand raised.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. I agree with Kennedy and Alicia and sorry, I totally forgot his name. I agree with them in that area, but I feel like the officer should have a layout of the area, and he does need to be familiar with everyone. He needs some experience with children. He needs to be kind. He needs to understand that as we age, different problems come up, and we can't fix all of those or control any of them, really. But the students need to respect the person and understand that they are there to protect them. And the officers need to be aware that it's not just a place where, hey, I'm here to be friendly and do all this. They need to be there to be friendly, but to be ready to do their job.
Right.
Great point, James, for sure. Look like Frida has joined us. So Frida, you want to share any comment on this one?
Hi. Well, I agree with my peers. I really like what Kennedy said about knowing that an officer would be working with children, because as someone in the criminal justice program, a lot of our teachers are cops, and they do explain to us how there's a difference when working with kids and teenagers that don't really much understand what it's like in that field. And then they, as officers, are used to working with adults. And it's just a very different thing emotionally, physically, on how the job changes. So I really like what Kennedy said when she was saying that they need to have a basis and knowledge on working with children.
Yeah, that's great, Frida, and I appreciate the way you articulated that. So Dr. Baldwin, I know that as we're talking about police departments in schools, there are different models of types of policing that occur within a school. If you can just give us a high-level overview, Dr. Baldwin, of the different models of police department and police interaction with schools, so we can kind of differentiate between police that are contracted, police that are school resource officers, and then also police officers that are actually our employees.
Hey, great. Yeah, thanks again, Dr. McFarland, for the opportunity to meet these incredible young people on the call and here participating in this event today. Typically, you'll see several different models of policing in a school. The one that you really most want is the community policing model, and the call today and the actions and the engagement with the students really replicates that model. In the community policing model, the police will ask the community, the student body, the faculty and staff, the parents and other stakeholders in the community about policing priorities. What do you want the police department to focus on? What do you want the police department's highest priorities to be? What's most important to the community? And most often, what's most important isn't enforcement. What's most important is having a relationship with the students and the families there in the school district, and not be so focused on crime and responding or reacting to crime. Another model is a more what we call reactive model, where the focus is on policing. And I've heard some students today allude to being over-policed. Well, the reactive model will have police officers more focused on what we call crime control, looking at the criminal aspects of policing and not so focused on the community aspects. That's not the model for a school. That's not what we want, and that's not what CISD is looking to put into the schools. There are school resource officers who are contracted personnel in schools. Now, the thing about SROs, many of the SROs are really good officers who develop relationships with students and with staff. But SROs, they work for another police department, like for the city of Fort Worth, for the city of Crowley. Those SROs work for those departments. And so if those departments are short of people, they're going to pull those SROs out of the schools to work on other problems and issues in those cities. So the SROs have an opportunity to focus on the schools, but they're just contract labor. They're not there permanently. And Dr. McFarland has already expressed all of the problems that you have when you don't have your own dedicated police officers and police force. So the other part of that is just having officers stop by and drop by whenever they can and available. That's not a good model. You have to build relationships. The officers have to get to know the students, faculty, and staff, and have to become a part of the community. And so of all of these different school policing models, you want the school police department that is a dedicated school district police department who is focused on community policing the schools, the entire district as part of their own community, and that they're intertwined and integrated into that same community.
All right, thank you, Doc.
Students, what are your thoughts after you hear those different types of models of policing? What stood out to you? Or any questions that you have for Dr. Bowman?
I have no questions, but I do have pinpoints. I wrote down some notes basically just when you talked about the different types of officers. So the reactive officer was the crime control, and we absolutely, well, I'm going to speak for myself, but on behalf of Crowley ISD students, I don't think that's a good fit. I mean, because when you're there for one reason, and that's to police and to control and to automatically just look for trouble, that's not the environment that you want to learn in, because at the end of the day, ultimately, we go to school to learn, to interact with our peers. We don't go to school to be, micromanaged and things like that. The SRO, that one I just don't feel like is reliable. Like Dr. Bowman said, they can be pulled out at any time. And if worst case scenario, we do need officers, they're not there to assist us. So I feel like the community officer is the best choice because they'll always be there. You know, they're trained through Crowley ISD and not their own. And they can stay permanently to build relationships.
Great summary, Kennedy. Dr. McFarland, you had something?
So, well, I thought I was going to allow Mr. Hunt. I thought Mr. Hunt was about to say something. So, but I do thank you for those comments, Ms. Jackson. Those were definitely right on point. Anybody else want to add to the question?
Yes, sir. Well, not to the question. Well, kind of. I feel like, we do need, a community officer, but also we do need a reactive officer. They don't need to look for trouble all the time. They need to understand that they are here to protect us, not to go around looking for trouble. But they also need to remember that they are there in case we do need them. They have to be not on edge, but they need to be ready to do anything really that they need to do.
You know, awesome. That's a great point, Mr. Hunt, because you know, one of the reasons we're having we want them present is that we acknowledge that our primary responsibility is to make sure that you all are safe. And so when instances where your safety is threatened, we definitely want officers prepared to be able to respond in an appropriate way, for sure. And you know, a lot of that speaks to training. And so I want you to think about, because we know that we'll have to train officers and get them prepared to be able to respond in the environment where we have school students and schools and all that. So what kind of training, if y'all can think of, and this may be a bigger question, but what kind of training from your perspective do you think would be critical for officers who are working in the school systems?
I feel like they still need their basic training. They need to be able to use the weapons they carry with them. They need to know when to use those weapons. But I feel like during that training, if they're introduced to some child that's just told, hey, try to be an annoying kid that needs help.
Mm-hmm.
If they can deal with an annoying kid that needs help in a crisis, then they can probably deal with most kids.
Gotcha. All right. Good point. Good point. Angel, any feedback on that? And then we'll come to you, Elijah. Angel, any feedback on the types of training you think your officers should receive?
So yeah, I believe officers that are working within a school district should have more training than your regular police officers. An area like a school may be more easily targeted than just say like just regular like policed areas. Like it has much more. It's a greater concentration of people that may not be able to defend themselves. So the policing there should be a little bit more enforced. There should be like more experienced officers there, and just the training with just basic training, knowing what they can do, like their actual handling with crime and actual crises like that. That should be on a higher level, because the situation is school districts are going to be extremely safety prioritized. So police officers of like higher regard should be affiliated with those districts, like school areas. And one thing going forward, talking about the community officers and stuff, I really enjoy that idea, considering if a community officer feels attached to this place, CISD, Crowley, and something happens, a crisis happens, they're going to be so emotionally attached, just everything's just going to come together to my think about just you're at home, your son gets attacked, you're going to be on edge, you're going to want, it's going to be like a mother protecting their son. That's how I want these officers to treat us. We're family. This is a relationship, and we want them to be with us. They want to protect us, love us. That's what I want for them.
Awesome, Angel. That I mean, your comments, man, all of y'all are just having some awesome comments, giving us awesome comments, and the insight to talk about the fact that you have this concentration of a potential target, man. That was pretty insightful. Appreciate it. Good comments. Elijah, you were about to share something.
Hey, firstly, Mr. Lopez, I totally agree with that. I would just like to add that when you talk about seeking those that's coming to govern the schools as it relates to, policing, you have to identify what are the students' needs. And so when they come into the district, what are some training that you would like to offer them? Of course, they have to go through police academy and things of that sort. But, you know, even with our principals and our teacher personnel, they have to go through certain level of trainings to be adequately prepared to service these students on a day-to-day basis. And so it shouldn't just be like, I'm a police and this is what I can do. I also should be able to work with those that may be going through things mentally. And I mentioned that last night, or those that may have something to say, but don't yet know how to vocalize it correctly. And so I think in that regard, you're talking about SEL training and things along that way.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff for sure. No doubt.
Can I say something?
Sure, Ms. Jackson, jump on in.
So I just like pinpointed, you know, a few things back to what Elijah said, you know, the emotional training. I do feel like emotional training is a big pinpoint because, you know, when you deal with kids, especially, you know, at the middle school and high school level, you know, they're growing, they're changing and stuff like that. So everyone is not going to be straightforward every day. Everybody is not going to have a good day every day. So I feel like that emotional training is a good point. And then the hands-on training, you know, just of how to react to situations. Like James said, you know, just at the end of the day, we need protection, but the ultimate goal is that we come to school to learn, you know, to take away knowledge and not to take away an experience of fear or, you know, just being overwhelmed and things like that. And then I feel like psychological training, you know, is a big one as well, because, you know, for someone, you know, they need to, you know, within themselves, you know, be psychologically prepared for certain situations and things like that. So, yeah.
Great point, Ms. Jackson, for sure. No doubt. Anyone want to add to the particular training needs that you think the officer would need?
It's like Alicia.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Okay, so what I would like to add is, for at least training-wise, I would really like for officers that know kind of how to work in an environment like a giant building, like a school building, because, you know, it's a completely different environment than outside. So I really like for officers to have special training of working inside the building, knowing how to clear rooms and knowing where to find danger if there is any.
Awesome. Okay. All right, Alicia.
Okay, I would like to touch back on what Elijah said about the SEL training and things like that. Personally, like I have anxiety and depression. So when my anxiety gets really, really bad, sometimes I'll tend to lash out easier. Like I want to storm out of the room because I feel so anxious, different things like that. And usually, you know, if a teacher is alarmed, all of a sudden doesn't know what's happening, they're going to call the hall monitor, and then along with the AP, maybe a police officer. So then personally, that would make me feel even more anxious, and I would want to freak out because it's like, well, why are all these people coming to get me when I just feel overwhelmed with, you know, school, friends, family? Because if you think about it, the whole year we spend most of our times at school with our teachers, with the other people around us. So it's like, it's almost like my second home. Like I have all my stuff there as an athlete. I have plenty of lockers that I keep my clothes, my books, my shoes, different things. And so it's like, I feel like if my parents care about how I feel and they take different approaches to different situations, whether I'm crying or mad or sad or happy or anything like that, it is also important for our teachers as well as our police officers or any administration to go through that training to assess the problem correctly. Because I just feel like sometimes either steps are taken that are unnecessary or not proactive enough. And I feel like depending on the person and what how this training needs to be used, if that made sense.
Yes. All right. Good stuff. All right. Anybody else want to add to that?
Agree with what Alicia said. You know, the whole anxiety, depression thing. Like students usually during times of the day at school, they're going to be on edge. They're going to be like, oh, I just got out of class, I'm tired, and they might just lash out. They might just present themselves as a threat. You want an officer that can approach scenarios with a calm attitude, with a reassuring attitude. You would want to approach them with like, I'm here for you. I can talk you like through this. Like, you would want them to be more of a friend talking to you out of something, as opposed to a police officer telling you what to do, like how to actually get through this scenario, and like not enforcing you as opposed to just reassuring you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, all right.
One of the words that I like that someone mentioned, I'm sorry, I have to just budge in, but they said proactive. And so one of the things that we should see is you being proactive and not reactive, meaning you're already going. But another thing that I would just kind of like to implore the leaders of our district to inquire about is to see what are those already needs we have now. What are some things that our campus administration wants to see from the candidates that are coming forward? Where do you need them at? Not only policing, but what in that position, it's an authority figure, it's a disciplinary. So what is something you want to see from them to ensure this, not only the safety of our students, but again, the growth of them?
Gotcha. So I think you just asked me a question, Elijah. Is that right?
I did, Doctor.
Okay, all right. I was just okay. So I can tell you what we're looking for, and it's more than just me, but we, from my vantage point, I'm looking for someone that can not only be a trained and expert police officer and law enforcement person, but also a person that can relate to kids, can connect with kids, able to be a role model, someone that's able to be a part of groups and clubs and organizations that students are a part of, someone that's present, someone that you can look up to and count on, someone that has an understanding of social and emotional needs and the implications those social and emotional needs have on behavior. So really that a person that you all have kind of already described, the person that we're looking for and the types of people that we're looking for. I can tell you, I want someone that feels like they're a part of this family and that they're willing to do whatever it takes in order to protect our family, but also to make sure our families have resources as they need them. So all of those characteristics would be ones that will be leading our matrix as we're making decisions for that.
Absolutely. And Dr. McFarland, what's great about a community conversation, the student input has been so valuable, but who's also getting to hear the student input are our faith-based partners that work so well in our schools. They're serving students and families. And so I'd like to invite them on and just talk about, pastors, what you've heard and what you feel like the faith-based community can do to help build these relationships. Pastor Baldwin? What about Pastor Bagnell? Are you just still there with us, sir? There we go.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm pretty impressed with what I hear about these young people. They got their ideas set in place, and they know what they're needing, know what they want. The thing that impresses me the most is they realize a relationship is the biggest thing. When we do our program with our Children Behind the Shield, we try to build relationships between children and officers, and the same familiar face is the key to that. And when an officer's in a school, they get to have time. When it's your officer, your trained person, people that know and understand Crowley schools and Crowley needs, they know each student. They know students that have some issues, maybe physical, maybe social issues, and they know when something goes wrong, how to react to that situation, because they have a relationship with those young people. I think it's so impressive, but what I think is the most important thing is that training your own officers where these young people know who they are, they see them daily, they're not just there at school, they're at the football games, they're at all the activities, they see them around town, they can interact with them there. So yeah, I think it's super important.
Thanks, Pastor Baldwin. Hey, Pastor Shelton, you're still with us there. What's your takeaway from what you're hearing from the students?
I got to echo Pastor Baldwin. The students, they're hitting the nail on the head. And it makes sense because they're the ones that's going to see those officers every day. They're the ones that know what would make them comfortable. So I just want to say I admire them for having the input they have, because it's so important that he hit the nail on the head about relationships, knowing them. I know the officer on the side of my church, I think they mentioned Officer Gardner at one of the schools. She's great. But I made sure I introduced her to all my members. They introduced her. But once again, once you know who you're talking to and vice versa, it just makes such a big difference. So I think this is a great program, and having Crowley have its own officers that the young people will get to know, they will get to know them. It's just 100% step in the right direction with all the social unrest and things we're seeing. It's a great step in the right direction. And like I said, the young folks on this call are right on it. I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor Shelton. So appreciate you so much. Pastor Bagnell, as someone who's been a police officer in Fort Worth, what are some meaningful and practical ways we can make these relationships happen in the schools?
Yeah,
with
well,
students?
and I think that, that word right there is the key. It's relationship. Going back to something that Dr. Bowman had mentioned in the aspect of community policing, when I was a former police officer, I had the opportunity to be what we call neighborhood police officers, which is community liaison police officers. I was assigned to a specific neighborhood, and I worked with the community leaders, the faith-based community. And I can tell you from an officer's perspective, I know we're talking from the students are talking from their perspective in regards to their relationship with the officer. One of the things that I experienced as an officer in a community policing environment was, as I got to know the community, I got to know the families that lived in that community. One of the things that really helped was in knowing the relationships. when issues popped up, I was able to assess from not just a law enforcement perspective, but from a relational perspective, and identify that, this is really not, it may appear on the surface a law enforcement issue, but it's not. It's something else that's there. And there were other resources that we were able to bring in and address it to where it never got to be a law enforcement issue. And I think that is really what the students are talking about here. And from an officer's perspective, that's something that I always wanted to get to was, law enforcement or the enforcement aspect of it would be a last resort, where we could collaborate together as a community. And that's the thing I love in regards to this aspect of a ISD police department is the ability to collaborate through relationships in all the different resources that are available, to where you're bringing in a community approach, not just a specific law enforcement approach. And I experienced that here at Turning Point. I was a police officer here providing off-duty security, but I was also a member, and I participated in small groups, and I taught classes. So I was part of the community, and it makes a huge difference from a police officer's perspective, because as I think it was Angel that mentioned the perspective of sort of a parent, that investment is, my goal is I'm wanting to protect those who are part of my family. Whether that means I have to take law enforcement action, or whether it means I just, I counsel them, or I find other resources. The goal is not to enforce something or take law enforcement action. The goal is to help, to bring the community forward, to help the students reach their potential, identify maybe early intervention, all those things. And the goal is always, as Kennedy said, for the students to receive the education they need, to reach their potential, to move on. And I think that aspect of relational community policing is key.
Thanks, Pastor Bagnell. Dr. McFarland is someone that we have on our panel, so we haven't got to hear from yet, but has been an SRO in another school district, but now is a campus administrator, been a campus teacher. Mr. Markeith West really brings in a unique perspective. Mr. West, what are your thoughts on what you've heard our students say today, and how do you look at your lens as a former SRO but now a campus administrator? Mr. West, you may be muted. There you go, sir.
I will say that I totally agree with everything that I'm hearing from the students. I find the word that I keep hearing the most is, when we talking about the officers, what type of officers, we tend to talk about training a lot. And so I guess I want to spend just a little second here talking about that. my time with Arlington Police Department, Dr. Bowman here, you know, they set up our training where we actually train at the police academy. But near the end of training at the police academy, we would get a chance to actually shut down Six Flags and actually run live scenarios where we were able to put our training into practice. And so I thought that that was some of the best training that I ever received, only because it's one thing actually sitting and talking about it and getting it, but it's another thing where you're able to, you know, put your training to the test, you know. And I think that type of training when we're talking about with our officers, all these perspectives that we're hearing from kids, these are all scenarios that we can throw by our officers. That's part of the training that they can actually go through. We can actually put them in a school building and actually have a kid, like Alicia said, that, you know, that's feeling depressed and maybe she just may run out the classroom. You can actually have that officer there to see how they would actually deal with that kid, or you can teach that officer how to deal with that kid. So that's the unique thing about having your own the police department. And Dr. McFarland had mentioned, like, okay, we can provide a level of training that's not actually given to those officers now. Luckily, myself, I found myself a successful SRO in Dallas, working in West Dallas at a high school, because one, I knew I had to build relationships. And two, I knew I was totally invested. And I think something else, a couple other things that can make a successful SRO or police officer in the school is someone that has excellent interpersonal and communication skills. Let's take North Crowley. You know, you're dealing with over 2,000 kids. You're dealing with over 2,000 personalities. You know, some kids come at you with ease. Some kids come at you a little bit more aggressive. But you just got to know how to deal and be able to talk through those. As an officer, you got to know how to engage and mingle with kids. Some kids just want you to ask, you know, hey, how you doing? They want you to check on their grades. Maybe they want to know, you know, hey, I'm cheering tonight. Can you come by and see me? You know, those are the little things that makes a big difference. And also is always possessing a positive attitude. You know, one thing as a police officer, you know, is in law that you can't be offended, you know, about what somebody else say. And so, you know, people can say some of the worst things out of their mouth, but as an officer, I can't be defended. You're taught and you're trained that. So you know that you got to have that positive attitude. The last thing I would say is probably just being culturally and socially sensitive, because you may have your opinion as an officer, you know, on certain issues that may arise, but you have to be so neutral when dealing with the community. When you actually when you're wearing that badge, when put on that uniform, you have to be neutral. You know, you may present yourself as a Democrat or Republican, but when you're coming into the building, you know, when you have your own views on certain things, you have to remain neutral. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Dr. McFarland, lots of really great feedback for us as we're moving forward with building this Crowley ISD Police Department.
Yeah, no doubt, and we definitely appreciate all of the feedback. We will. I know we've been on for about an hour or so, but we're gonna give you a chance, any students a chance to share any last minute comments with us about what we are attempting to do. Any advice? If you had the responsibility to, you know, I want each one of you students to think about this. If you had the responsibility of ensuring the safety of 16,000 of your friends, sisters, brothers, cousins, and ensuring that things were done in a decent order, and police hiring your own police was an option that's being considered, what would be one or two things that you think would be most important? You've already shared a lot, but if anybody have anything else you'd like to share, I'm definitely open, because we have to make some critical decisions within the next couple of weeks. So I want to hear from you. So here's your opportunity. Anybody?
Dr. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would just like to add on to what my principal, Mr. West, said. He said something toward the end. He said to be socially and culturally sensitive. And I think that's all the advice that needs to be left there, because anytime that you go into a setting or an environment, not only do you have to bring what you can bring, but you have to anticipate what that environment is like. And so I think most importantly, what I've seen is climate changers. And I think that's what we need, someone that can come in and change the climate as it relates to policing within our schools, identifying the needs of our students and say, hey, this is something that I you not only to govern in the school, but making sure that our students again reach that growth and align with the visions that are set out for the district. And that's all that I would like to add. I would also just like to thank y'all for, doing this. I think it's great, and I love that you continually keep your students involved. I appreciate it. I'm honored every time, each and every time.
All right. Well, thank you, Elijah, for your words. Right on point. Anybody else? Kennedy?
Yes. Back to what Mr. West said, I think he hit each and every point. I mean, the whole time I was just in awe because, everything that he said, from the training to the sensitivity, from being neutral in situations, all of those are very important measures, because anytime you deal with that many people from different backgrounds, races, religion, anything, it's important for you to know that there's still love shared, even if me and you don't agree on the same thing, And I just feel like that was important. So yeah, I just think that everything that he hit on, I loved it.
Awesome.
I just
Awesome.
want to say thank you as well. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this and to give my intake on how I feel. Just thank you.
No doubt, Kennedy. We thank you for just being a leader, man. I just enjoyed hearing your feedback, every time. So definitely looking forward to it. And I want all of y'all to know that this is the very beginning of the conversation. And so we'll continue having these conversations. But again, I just appreciate the insight that y'all are sharing. James, I think you were about to share.
Yes, sir. Are officers going to be armed?
Yes. Right now, we have not considered not having them armed because one of the primary responsibilities is for them to help us maintain safety. So currently, they are we are anticipating that they'll be armed.
Okay, thank you.
How you feel about that, James? You think they should be or shouldn't be, or what's your perspective?
I feel like officers should be armed. Police officers going to a school with a taser isn't exactly going to do everything. But I feel like it's better to have the police officers armed in case something does happen. We want them to be ready to do this, but their training does involve a weapon. They should have one weapon that can definitely benefit them.
All right, thank you, James. And I did make some assumptions, so let me take a step back. Let me ask that question. And I know for some of you adults, if you made commitments for an hour, you may have to leave. We appreciate it, but I want to continue the conversation. And I do have one other critical topic to talk to y'all about, but not connected to Chief, but it is connected to safety. So if y'all can give me a couple minutes, I appreciate it. I was asked the question actually before we started about whether or not our officers would be armed or not. And from my perspective and my background, and just from my seat, my initial response was yes, they will be. But then let me stop and let me say, okay, what do y'all think? Kennedy and others, what do y'all think about that? Should the officers be armed in the schools or not? I'd like to know from your students what your perspective is about that.
I do think they should be armed. I mean, not to use in just any situation, but it is necessary because you never know what could happen. So I do think being armed is definitely a necessity.
Gotcha. All right. And then Freedom, what do you think, Freedom?
I agree with Kennedy because once again, you never know what can happen. So I believe that it's always being a step toward preparedness. Mm-hmm. So I do believe they should be armed. But before we switch back, I just wanted to say that with what Mr. West said, I know we're advocating for the students right now, but I think that we should also think of what parents would want. And when we were talking about the cultural situation, I believe that we should have officers that can understand and know how to deal with parents who don't speak English, parents who don't understand, parents who have disabilities who can't speak, because we have a very cultural, diverse district. So it's important that we know how to assess every different culture's and race's needs.
Frida, that is an awesome point. We have about, I think I shared last night, there are about 44 different languages that are spoken at home of students that attend our schools. So what we're saying is that we do have a very diverse district, one of probably the most diverse in the area, where all ethnicities are represented and all these different languages are spoken at home, which means that we have all these different cultures at home that are all coming into our schools. So to your point, cultural responsive training, culturally awareness training is something that's critical to us and critical to those officers for sure. Good point. Anyone else want to have any closing comments or any closing things that you want to share about the chief before we make a transition?
I do.
Okay.
So what I want to say about when you were talking about the police officers, but I also don't feel like whenever, because I'd assume you would train your police officers to maybe walk around every once in a while to make sure everything's okay, so you can see other students.
Right.
That it's important that when they're doing that, maybe to not wear all their belts and whistles, because it'll make people a little bit more alarmed. It's okay, I see their gun, oh my gosh, I see their baton, their pepper spray, their mace, all that stuff, because I know they keep all that on their belt. So it's I'm not saying don't wear your belt, because that's not what a police officer should do. But I mean, necessarily, I don't feel like all those weapons are used, because you're not going to use all of those weapons on a kid, especially a teenager, when it's a grown man versus a 16-year-old boy. Right. Or when you have two of them, you're going to be able to handle the situation. And when somebody else has a deadly weapon, then, match as necessary. But when it's just walking around like that, I don't think you should have all of that on you. And then, what was I going to say? I forgot. I think that was my only point. And I just feel like we did hit a lot of really good points. And I remember my question. Whenever you're interviewing or you're going to hire your police officers, who is going to be doing the interviewing? Are you going to have a board of people? Are you going to have 2 or 3 administrators plus you? How is that going to work?
So as it relates to hiring of the officers, we're kind of working through what that procedure will be, the officers. But as far as the hiring of a chief, we have a process that we put in place where we first had several of our experts to identify candidates. And so we had about 80 or so, probably a little more than that, candidates from all across the nation. They interviewed them. That company, Dr. Bowman's company, had actually helped us to get through that process. Did all kind of evaluations, background checks, all of those things. And then internally at the district level, we had a series of administrators to also administrator and teachers to interview the candidates. And then, of course, they brought candidates to me. And so now I have actually 2 candidates. And a part of my process is hearing from you all about, what are the key characteristics, so that I can take those key characteristics and look at these 2 candidates who have been vetted and all that and kind of determine which one we feel like would be best for you all. Now, the next step is once we hire a chief, then the chief and myself and Mr. Kirsch and all, we'll come back to you all, and then we'll start to talk about what kind of officers we want in our department. And so that's where you all will definitely have some input in that process as well, helping us to create that profile.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. I was just wondering how it was going to work, because I didn't want it to be unfair, because I know how everybody's feeling, but I just didn't want it to be that everybody didn't agree on one person being placed here, because I do think that, other officers would be more comfortable in middle school, high school, elementary, different things like that. So I just wanted to make sure we were putting the right person in the right place with the right people judging.
Yes, no doubt.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh yeah, and one more thing about the when you're looking for an officer, you will want to look for somebody who, they have to go through training and stuff. You want to look for somebody that's already passionate, already knows how to work with kids, that's experienced in that. that field, and you want somebody who can give off a good impression, because you never know what students go and tell like their friends and stuff. Always give off a first impression, even if the situation was bad. Give off a good first impression as an officer, so when your friend or the student leaves, they can say, "Oh, that officer, he was a cool person. I don't have a problem with him." You can trust him, type stuff. So that's what I think you should look in for an officer.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Good, definitely great points.
Dr. McFarland, I'd just like to briefly add on to kind of your question relating to should officers be armed or not. And just all throughout this call, we've been talking about relationships and being proactive. And then, Mr. West came in and he talked about, being sensitive to the culture and the climate. And to that, I would say when you talking about bringing a police chief in and even officers, you cannot ignore the conversation that needs to be had regarding students in the district. And when it comes to policing, it's a very sensitive conversation, especially being a Black man, a Black young male. The fear that I feel when a police officer get behind me, we want those types of things to be addressed internally. Okay, I know you're here to police, but what are some things that you're doing to fix these issues that we have with policing in communities among, minorities and things of that sort? So don't come in and ignore that, because that's a factor that needs to be addressed and addressed immediately when you talk about hiring in chief and police officers.
Awesome. Good points for sure. No doubt. All right. Nation?
As you know, as probably everybody else knows, we do have a game against North Crowley in a couple of weeks. So my question is, what safety precautions are you taking for this game so that we can protect as well as the visitors and the students, as far as metal detectors, bags? I know we touched on it last night just a little bit, but I just want you to elaborate on what you plan on doing.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bellman, because that's what I was going to go. I was going to make the transition now, and so what I want to do is kind of take you all back to the spring, and back in the spring, around January, February, when we were in school and during basketball season. Many of y'all know that we in a reaction to what was occurring within our community, both here in Crowley, here in Fort Worth, as well as Dallas and the other areas. In a reaction to what we were seeing, we actually put in metal detectors for several of our basketball games, and it was a reaction. Let me be real clear. It was a reaction in an attempt to kind of ensure safety. And so I do know that just talking to students last night, it sent mixed messages. And so I want to know about your perspective as it relates to metal detectors, and primarily metal detectors at large, at events, at extracurricular events where we have large numbers of students. That's what I'm asking about specifically, is a metal detectors. Kind of how do you feel about them? Do you think they're necessary? What kind of message they send? Just want to get your perspective on that.
Metal detectors are most definitely essential because there's a lot happening in the world, and you could say and assume you don't think somebody do that, but you never know what's going on in someone's head psychologically. It takes one thing for somebody to just snap, and you never know. So I feel like we do need metal detectors because you'd rather be safe than sorry. It does send mixed messages on, oh, it feels unsafe to be here, but then again, I'd rather have that feeling for a second than not have metal detectors at all, and then something happens at the game and I don't get to walk home to my parents.
All right.
Yeah, and Dr. McFarland, I want to apologize about my response on last night. I know I told you I feel like a criminal walking through them, but let me give some clarity after even from last night relating to it. It was the implementation of it in the middle of the year. Now that we're going into a year and this is something we can expect, that's something quite different, and so it was just like, I feel like I did something wrong. So I just think it was the middle of the year implementation. But just like you said, now the district has time to plan and say, hey, this forward and we're going to do it now. So it won't be mixed signals, or it won't be a reaction as to something we heard something, or, so it's already in place. That's
All right. And I'm just saying last year was a reaction. What I'm considering, there's no decision been made about this year yet, but I do want to know how you feel about it. And so definitely, am I interested? Kennedy, what do you think?
As far as the metal detectors go, I agree with Deja. I do think it's essential because, when you come into, a vicinity with thousands of people, anybody could be a target, but a bullet doesn't have a name on it, so it's like you never know what could happen. So I feel like as far as games and stuff go, I mean, for someone to take an extra couple of seconds to, ensure safety measures, I don't feel like that's a bad thing. So,
Gotcha. Alicia, what do you think?
I agree with what everybody else is saying, that metal detectors are definitely essential because, for example, my parents are both TCU alumni and my dad played basketball at TCU. So we're at every tailgate all the time, going to all the football games, all the basketball games. And what do they have you do? Clear bags and metal detectors every time. And I know there's like so many more people there than there would be at a North Crowley game. But I feel like no place, no matter how big or how small, depends on how safe you are, how safe you aren't. So it's like, I think it was a good idea to enforce the clear bags, the smaller bags, the bags need to be checked, and that we have a metal detector as well. But I do think that it was sprung on people a little bit because, out of the blue, it's like, oh, now we have this new thing. I mean, anybody's going to act like that when a new rule is implemented. It's like, oh, we have to do that now. But I don't think you caused any harm or anything because you still had the same amount of people going to the games. You still have the same amount of sales, fans, all that stuff. But what I do, I guess not fear, I guess I want to be cautious about is how we are going to get checked safely because the virus is still going to be a thing. I hate to be the person to bring it up, but honestly, like people touching other people's stuff, whether you have gloves or not, because you would have gone through other people's stuff. It's just like the transferring of all the bacteria and germs, having to safely check people. I just feel like that's when your rules have to get stricter because we have so many more factors that can play into so many more bad outcomes. So definitely have clear bags only. Definitely, or no bags. Definitely keep the metal detectors, but make sure, I don't know, maybe you can like somehow sanitize in between to make sure they don't keep too many. Like, I know that they started to do that, the little wand when you would check on people like that. I don't know if that's such a good idea because you get really close to somebody, just things like that. I feel like that's something that really needs to be taken serious because even if we do have a vaccination, you still don't want to spread the germs.
Right.
So just figuring how we can balance that out too.
All right. Frida, you have any perspective on that?
I agree with my peers along with the metal detectors. The clear bags, I'm not so sure because if you're already going through the metal detector, then I feel like that's a good start and a good safety precaution because if you treat someone like a criminal, they're going to feel a certain way. Just like Elijah was saying that he felt like a criminal, that the changes that we did make last year had everyone like, oh, well, what do they expect from us? Like, why would we come in with weapons or why would we bring in something unsafe to the game? But like Kennedy said, we never know what's going to happen. So I feel like the metal detectors are a good beginning. And if we see that that's not working or if there's anything else that happens that is unsafe, then we could switch back to the clear bag policy.
Yeah. And decisions about safety like this are always very difficult because we know that there's nothing that's foolproof, and the idea behind the metal detectors initially really was around the fact that we hoped that it would become a deterrent, not that it would send the message that we thought that our students were criminals or were going to do something, that was out of expectation. But I do know it sends a message, and I'm concerned about that, and so we thought through that. And the reality is, everything that we do with safety sends a message. It sends a message when we say that we're going to add a police department. And the counter to that argument is that by adding more police, we increase the likelihood that we feed into the prison pipeline, the school to prison pipeline by over policing and by when we have school discipline that we're actually using police officers to engage in school discipline and all that. And so I know there are all these other counter arguments that what I'm telling you that we are considering and we are using or thinking through as we're making decisions. But your input and your feedback, has been critical for me. And so I appreciate you all sharing. We do have some decisions to make about the North Crowley game and the metal detectors. I'm not sure what we'll decide at this point, but I can tell you that metal detectors as a standard operating procedure, they're not things that we're considering as a standard operating procedure for entrance in and out of school. But it is an option for us when we're having larger events. And so I wanted to, larger attended events. And so just wanted to make sure we kind of clarify that. So you all have helped me out. You all have given me a lot of information, and I really appreciate the time. I know we went a little bit over, but I really appreciate the time, students. And again, as I told you all last night, some of you that understand that this is the beginning of us hearing your voice and getting your input. My commitment to you is that as we're making decisions as we move forward throughout this pandemic and throughout this school year, we plan to come back to you and to get more input and feedback from you, because we know that the decisions we make have impacts directly on your experience in our schools. A couple of years ago, we created, well, actually last year, it seems like a couple of years ago, but it was actually last year, we engaged in a process where we were designing a strategic plan. And what came out of that strategic plan was that as a board, Ms. Benton, of course, was part of our board, and as a board, the board was really clear that we want to make sure that by the year 2025 that we have the top educational educational system in Tarrant County. That's our aspiration. And in order for us to be there, we had three goals. One was that we would have thriving students. And we know that you all can't thrive unless we first ensure that you're safe. And so we're trying to do that. Thank you all for helping us do that. We also said that we would have empowered staff and an engaged community. And so to me, an engaged community looks like what we're doing today, looks like what we did last night, what we have done throughout this pandemic. We've listened, we've heard, you've provided input, and so we appreciate you all for being an engaged community. Thank you to our ministerial leaders for sharing your insight as partners. It's definitely critical, and we appreciate it. And also thank you to Dr. Baldwin for your expertise. You've helped us through this process. We're going to continue to lead on you as we design the department that these students deserve, for sure. And I'd like for Ms. Benton to kind of close us out as a board member and an educator and a leader from Crowley ISD, both with her own children and also many other children. We just definitely appreciate her insight. So I will ask her to just kind of give us some closing remarks from the board and from your perspective. Ms. Benton.
Well, thank you, Dr. McFarland. I'm just thrilled that we were able to hear from so many student voices with this. You guys have provided so much insight into this process. And I really feel like the district and the school board, we're committed to your safety. We're also committed to doing that right and making sure that you have input on that situation, and you guys have contributed to that in a great way today. And having been a previous principal myself in Crowley at H.S. Stevens and at Crowley High School and Crowley Middle School, I've worked with a lot of SROs, and I know that they can be an absolutely integral part of the school family. I'm just really excited that we're doing this on the front end of a new endeavor to make sure that we hear student voices, we hear community voices, and that we really do this all in the right way. So thank you for being a part of that process.
All right, thank all of you all for giving up your time today, and thank you for the extra time. And so we really appreciate it. Thank you for Mr. Kershaw for pulling it all together. Y'all have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.